Have you ever sat down to play a game and thought to yourself, I want to play something scary, only to endlessly search your respective digital store or home library, unsure of which games are actually scary? I have. Hello, gamers, and welcome to the Game Review, where we ask the question, is it scary? I'm your host, Rob, and the subject of today's video is The Evil Within. The Evil Within, thankfully, is one of those horror games that doesn't try to rely on jump scares to terrify you. Instead, this title is driven by a slow, sustained, and deeply pervasive sense of dread. Much of the game's tension is thanks to its impressive use of atmosphere. So gloomy and impactful, it actually borders on being suffocating. The Evil Within could have been something truly special if it wasn't your occasional dalliance with this game's aimless and sputtering plot. Don't get me wrong, it has a lot of interesting ideas, though none of them are truly ever fully explored. What's left is an uneven but ultimately captivating ode to the glory days of survival horror. The game opens with a fascinating and truly hypnotic intro song, accompanied by an interesting set of images and symbolism about the tale this game will tell. Unfortunately, I can't play any of it for you cause copyright. While its central mystery starts off as compelling, things gradually take a left turn, and the story eventually falls apart as it quickly becomes unfocused. It has many interesting ideas, a lot of which it doesn't take advantage of. I found the ending in particular a complete disappointment. Tacked on like a film major who ran out of time and had to wrap up everything in an exhibition dump. Seriously, Tango Gameworks, you ended the game with a mob battle and what amounts to a playable cutscene. The Evil Within deserved so much better. That being said, I really enjoyed the game as a whole. The enemies in particular stand out as one of my favorite parts. These human-like monsters that populate early chapters are known as the Haunted, wielding hatchets and hurling sticks of dynamite at you and running like something out of 28 Days Later. Your first introduction to the horrors of this world is the Sadist, a chainsaw-wielding, leather-face-looking MFer. As the game's tale unravels, you will meet increasingly nasty and challenging foes, such as Laura, a twisted and screaming memory, and the Keeper, an instantly iconic creature with a safe for a head. I absolutely love the design of some of the monsters in this game. The bosses in particular remind me of horror games past. No, really, some of the creatures in this title look like they were ripped right out of Silent Hill. They're interesting and innovative and only become more and more grotesque as the game wears on. It's freaking awesome. The Evil Within is a truly brutal experience where even the slightest lapse in concentration can turn you into a pool of viscera on the ground. As a result, caution and patience are your greatest allies in this fight for survival. Enemies that pepper this game's locales are plentiful, unpredictable, and smart, initially evoking Resident Evil 4's shambling ganados. Ruvik is this title's primary villain, and honestly, he's a solid antagonist. Ruvik is a thin, sharp-faced man who is heavily disfigured with various burns and scars, giving him the appearance of a walking corpse. Ruvik's tale is one of revenge, torture, and love lost. Born Ruben Victoriano, Ruben was an intellectually gifted but mentally unstable child.
You think I'm some kind of a monster?
He was very close with his sister, Laura. While playing in a barn on their family estate, Laura was killed and Ruben severely burned after the barn was set on fire by some farmers as an act of revenge against their parents.
Hey, I think there's kids in there. I didn't hear anything.
Due to his disfigurement from the fire, Ruben's father hid him away in the basement of the family manor. Deeply traumatized over Laura's death and
being locked away like that thing in your mom's drawer,
Ruben eventually killed both of his parents. He takes control of their fortune and continues to donate money to the Beacon Mental Hospital in exchange for test subjects for his ongoing experiments into the human psyche. After losing his sister in the fire, he sinks years of research and his sanity into bringing her back, thus creating STEM. Only to have the world's shadiest organization, Mobius, steal it all away from him, putting Ruvik on a path of revenge that soon swallows Beacon Hospital and the surrounding city, thus adding all our protagonists and the innocent city into a fever dream, a place of horrid and twisted nightmares found only in the darkest recesses of Ruvik's mind. In complete opposition to this game's well-written antagonist, our protag is lackluster at best. The narrative wrapper is undermined by the rather lifeless player character, Detective Sebastian Castellanos, who is emotionless and calm to the point of parody.
Necessary for me, my ass.
Sebastian still quips mundanities after hours of facing the kind of monsters that would drive the average person into total freaking insanity.
I mean, geez, look at this thing! Yeah, man, what do you gotta say about that?
What is going on here?
Why are you the way that you are? It's really hard to care about the game's stakes when it appears he doesn't.
What really upsets me about Sebastian is he has no real character development as the game wears on. He's like a blank slate, just a placeholder so the player can insert themselves. The best part is it's like the developers got to the end of the game and realized how blank and uninteresting Sebastian really was. So they went back and added an actual backstory for him. All of Sebastian's backstory can be found in the little journal notes you find before you enter your save room. The developers wanted to make sure you saw these notes by forcing you to pick them up in order to enter your save room. The mirror will not crack and let you in unless you pick them up.
Shit.
Sebastian's backstory is halfway decent despite seemingly being tacked on. The story had so much potential, though it lacks any trace of that cheekiness and charm of early survival horror games. It's genuinely bad at times, and too much of the plot can be easily misinterpreted. The game is purposely not told in order so that you can act as a detective and put all the pieces together, though I think this leaves way too much to interpretation. Sebastian is wooden and thoroughly uninteresting as a protagonist, a gruff cop with a dark past, and a drinking problem.
I mean, really, the only way they could have made this dude even more cliche is if he was a week away from retiring.
Doc, what the hell is going on? There's no time.
Then there's the overarching plot, so meandering and half-assed with its constant jump ins and outs of Sebastian's tormented visions that this narrative trickery becomes so boring and freaking routine. It's almost like a day at work.
What do you make of it?
A majority of this game takes place in the very unique location of STEM. The name STEM is derived from brainstem, referring to the machine's ability to link consciousnesses.
Brains.
Ruvik designed STEM with the pure intention of using it to create a reality of his own. Designed so that he can be with his sister, Laura.
Lovely.
Upon entering Beacon Hospital, you are wirelessly connected to STEM through your proximity to it. Then, at some point in the game, it's not really clear when, you are hardwired into STEM via the Terminus, a Matrix-like device. My favorite part of this entire game is the clever transitions between locations. I cannot stress enough how much I love it. Whether you're exploring a derelict ward splattered with blood and overturned wheelchairs, a ravaged urban center where aquatic monsters patrol its flooded streets, or even the most time-tested of survival horror settings, the creepy mansion, The Evil Within transports you through a diverse assortment of places with one theme tying them all together. The thoughts and memories of a freaking psycho.
What you fear? Will you be able to live with yourself knowing what I'm gonna make you do? Poor little Joseph couldn't. Too bad they dragged you into this. But either way, you're mine. To do with as I please.
So, with all that being said, let's answer the question. Is it scary? No, not at all. The Evil Within is a brutal, challenging, and remarkably fun game. However, it sort of felt like you needed to be a lifelong fan of Resident Evil to get the most out of this title, between all its Easter eggs and references. It's an eerie world with imaginative enemies that can be genuinely frightening. And the scares can be heightened significantly with the lack of resources that are at your disposal. It keeps the odds stacked against you to the point where they sometimes feel insurmountable. Though it's finely tuned so that they never really are. Though the scares in this game are more like baby's first horror game level of frightening. Though the plot buckles under the weight of its own ambition, there's very little that will take away your enjoyment of this title. I have heard some people complain about the amount of customization that the character and the weapons can have, and the amount of different types of ammo and weapons in general can be a bit overwhelming, but I think that adds to the replayability of this game. You could play the entire game without ever using one weapon, and then your next playthrough, it could be your favorite weapon. Where are my Agony Crossbow lovers? The in-game transitions from one environment to the next are some of my absolute favorites. I mean, just check this one out. Seriously, how awesome was that? That's way better than just walking to the next area of the map. So the world lacks context, but it doesn't lack impact. The Evil Within is a horror game built on such outstanding foundations. The chilling use of light and shadow, the menacing audio flourishes, make merely traversing the environment an uncomfortable and uncanny experience. Any scares that this title might actually get out of you comes from a combination of interesting enemies, the actual setting, and the lack of resources. No, seriously, you try fighting the Keeper with 10 handgun bullets. I did. For as much as The Evil Within falls completely flat on its face, it always seems to recover for me. What this game does at its core, it does so well that all its little inconsistencies and failings just fade away from me. What's left is a satisfying return to classic survival horror. The scares in this title are about on par with Jacob's Ladder and The Cell. Yes, the Jennifer Lopez movie. I don't know, man. They're similar. What can I say? While this one won't evoke feelings of terror, the reason to play this one is the game's fascinating gameplay, its great creature design, and its story elements. I hope you guys like that review. Our next video will be on The Evil Within 2, a far superior game to the original. Make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss that. And with that, remember, the scariest monsters are the ones that exist in our very own minds. See you next time.
Let me in.